Rabbi Yisroel Dovid Weiss, we've met several times before. We've had, you know, a lot of strong stands. I think, especially this walk against Israel, while the Zionists go do the walk with Israel, and he has a lot of determination. Comes all the way from New York, make sure he comes here on time, early, and to make his stand, and to promote what he wants to promote for his faith. He's an Orthodox Jewish rabbi, a spokesman for Neturei Karta International, Jews United Against Zionism. He travels worldwide to exploring that not only is the state of Israel a violation of international law, but also that the whole Zionist ideology is built on a rebellion against the Almighty. He is constantly clarifying the difference between Judaism and Zionism, which Zionism is a transformation of Judaism from a religion to nationalism. Rabbi Weiss attends frequently in international pro-Palestinian conferences, meets with high-ranking Muslim and Arab dignitaries, and has a history of building bridges between Arab and Jewish communities. In an effort of restoring the historic, beautiful coexistence between Arabs and Jews in all Muslim countries, he stresses always that the traditional, pious Jews who observe the teachings of the Torah, the people of the book, take no part in the oppression against the Palestinian people. On the contrary, they oppose it in the strongest terms and constantly pray for the speedy and peaceful dismantlement of the state of Israel at the time when we all will once again be able to live in peace and harmony. Rabbi Weiss visited Gaza, Turkey, Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, Iran, Yemen, Qatar, Indonesia, Malaysia, South Africa, and all other major European countries, and more, to participate in conferences, lecturing in universities, speaking for the masses, and personally meeting with many religious and governmental leaders. He spoke at the UN Conference on Racism at Durban, South Africa in 2001, and much more. He visited Gaza in July and December of 2009 as part of an aid convoy to the suffering Palestinians. The Neturei Karta International is an apolitical religious organization committed to publicizing the viewpoint of masses of anti-Zionist Orthodox Jews worldwide who strongly oppose the state of Israel and its actions. Neturei Karta International has reached in the past great achievements and is well known worldwide. So we'll give a chance to Rabbi Yisroel Dovid Weiss and listen to some of his wisdom. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
And the first thing is, first I pray to the Almighty to bestow upon me His truth, His wisdom, that I may be worthy of conveying His message, and so, inshallah, sanctify His name and hopefully bring peace to the world. So, Alaikum, greetings to everybody. It's really, I'm humbled that I'm invited to come here. It's the Islamic humanitarian service to Sheikh Shafik Huda. I'm humbled that I have this privilege that I've been taken to be the one to represent the Jewish view.
Our honor.
And so God should help that I should be able to do it properly. And Firaz is, of course, a very good friend, somebody who's standing up for the Palestinian people, and that's how we got to know each other. An organization, Canadian Defenders for Human Rights, that's something that is laudable, and it's not an easy job. It's not an easy thing to do. And he just was mentioning to me that today was a hot day, a hard day, a long day. I spoke to him through the night a few times, and yet he was fasting the whole day. He was fasting, and I barely drank something. So really so laudable, and God should help us be successful in our endeavors. And I just had the privilege of meeting Reverend Paul Shapelitz, and I'm very, very happy to hear that there are people who, although it's a hard field in the Christian field because it's overwhelmingly in support of the state of Israel, and still somebody to be able to stand up and speak out is something to be lauded, and I appreciate that. So yeah, and I'm going to try with God's help to be concise. It's an overwhelming project, this, because we're talking now, it's coming to 75 years of the occupation.
Yes.
It's not really 75 years of occupation. It's well over 100 years of occupation. If anybody knows the history of Zionism, it's over 100 years. Zionism was 1870, 1880. There's a lot of time. There's difference when it started, really the birth of it. And the leaders, as a general rule, we have to understand that we had a great rabbi, actually, Rabbi Teitelbaum of blessed memory. He was the chief rabbi of Palestine, and I always preface this with saying the chief rabbi of Palestine, the chief rabbi of Jerusalem, Zionism presents itself with a Sephardic chief rabbi, Ashkenazic chief rabbi, to encompass that they're covering, that they're representing the Jewish people from all over the world. Excuse me. But in truth, it's a farce. They're masquerading in this cloth of spirituality, because there is a community, there was a community that was living in Palestine, and nobody could refute the fact that they were living there for hundreds of years without any concept of Zionism. They were a very religious community, and they had very holy rabbis living there. And this community were totally very religious, and they weren't Zionist. Later, the community, they had a whole series of rabbis that were there, and the Rabbi Sonnenfeld became the representation of this religious community that was there. He met with the king of Transjordan to oppose and to present the view of the Jewish community that was there, that they do not accept the Zionist movement. So we have to understand first what this Zionist movement is. I was trying to say that the Rabbi Teitelbaum, who was the chief rabbi after he passed on, and then there was another chief rabbi, Rabbi Dushinsky, then of blessed memory, and then there was Rabbi Teitelbaum, who actually moved to the United States and remained with this title as chief rabbi, even though he was living in New York, and he really built up a tremendously large community, and around the world, a lot of branches, a lot of called Satmar. He was called the Satmar rabbi because he came originally from Satmari in Romania. But they took him they always looked for the most elite, the most spiritually holy and great rabbi to take that position as chief rabbi of Palestine, and that's why they took Rabbi Teitelbaum. But Rabbi Teitelbaum moved out, and he urged, and he always encouraged his followers to move away from the state of Israel, because he was already chief rabbi when there was the state of Israel. And he said, you don't know how you're supporting it. You don't know what you're doing. Every step you could be supporting them. You don't even know how. You don't know how you're benefiting from them. So he urged. He didn't declare that you have to leave, because, I mean, it's really, technically, it was extremely hard. People have old parents. People are entwined with many different issues. But he always urged people to move away. We had all the rabbis, and we put out a book called The Rabbis Speak Out, 130-year record of religious Jewish opposition to Zionism. And being that the time is short, but this is just a compilation of the rabbis from around the world, from Sephardic lands, from Poland, from Hungary, from Jerusalem, from really all the lands, the leading rabbis, because there were tens of thousands of others, but each one in their style and their manner spoke out against Zionism. Many times I quote Rabbi Yisroel Meir HaKohen, who was in the Jewish world, he was one who compiled the laws and condensed it and made it easy for people today in this generation to follow the laws of the Torah. It's in a condensed form, and it's accepted around the world. He was very famous. He passed away in 1933. And I'm just going to quote one quote that he said. Please. He said, "The Zionists are dead limbs of our people, which causes the entire body to rot." So I'm just giving an example where he said nobody could deny his greatness and what a respectful scholar and accepted throughout the world. So this is just one example. And he was from Radin, Poland. He lived in Poland. He passed away well before the Zionist state was created. So let us just understand in very short terminology what the issue of Zionism is versus Judaism. Judaism is, as people know, is a religion of 3,000 years to be subservient to God. Moses went on Mount Sinai, took the Torah from God, and we made a covenant with God that we'll be subservient to Him and follow the laws of the Torah. Everybody was created by God. Everybody has to serve God. You don't have to be Jewish to serve God. That's the Jewish perspective. It's totally, we don't have a concept that you have to become Jewish to serve God. But the Jews made a special covenant to uphold the laws, to be a nation of priests, because meaning that we are 24 hours a day, we are involved. We have to pray, learn, study. It's a whole, and there's 613 commandments in the Torah. The Almighty, when we made this covenant, it meant that we're subservient to God. That's what our life is all about. And part of this covenant was that God said that when there will come a time we will go into the Holy Land. And there, we will build a temple to serve God, because it is exactly the word it means, the Holy Land. That it's like God's garden. And that God wants us to be on a high level of holiness. If we are not on that level, then the land will reject us as a body rejects a foreign object, and you have to take a lot of medication that the body should not reject. So the prophets, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, they all warned us that we are not on that high level of holiness. They were very good Jews, but they were not on that level of perfection. And therefore, we will be sent into exile, and they came about the destruction of the temples, King Solomon's temple, and then we were put on the three oaths that what God warned us: do not return en masse to the Holy Land. Secondly, do not rebel against any nation. You have to be loyal citizens in every country residing. And thirdly, do not make any attempt to end the exile. Jews, we're talking of 2,000 years ago, this destruction of the temple, and since that time till today, Jews have gone through trials and tribulations, the Inquisition, the Crusades that you were mentioning about, that you had the strength to speak out and say such a thing, not to be afraid. That's really to be lauded. And but Jews were burnt at the stake. They were tortured because they refused to convert. And this was Jews. Yet we never. And there was a golden age of Judaism where they had money, they had the ability to really create their own homeland, but they didn't. And there's many responses, meaning people asked the rabbis, and the rabbis responded, and they said, no. They were asked, should we buy a piece of land? That would be a logical solution. We'll have our own home. So, no. God is ruling the world. God is compassionate. God sees everything. If the Almighty wanted that we should have our land, God would make that come about. But He warned us that we are forbidden to create even 1 inch of Jewish sovereignty. We are in exile till the Almighty will make a metaphysical change where all humanity will serve God in harmony and all the nations will come together. That's why we were never a threat for the Muslim people, because we are never to take matters into our hands. Okay. We have a difference of belief what will be at the end of time, but it's in the hands of God. God, let Him decide. Whenever that will happen, Jews have our belief, but we believe that one day there will be a metaphysical change, and everybody will recognize this metaphysical change, because there will be a spirit of repentance and everybody will join arms. It says, all the nations will join arms and serve God in harmony. But till that day comes, we are forbidden to make any attempt to even have 1 inch of Jewish sovereignty. This is the Jewish belief, the 101 of Judaism. And all the rabbis around the world, and all the laymen and everybody, we respect that. It's an integral part of our religion to believe that God is compassionate and to accept what God does. We may not comprehend why the issue of Hitler, and it's not a time for now because the time is short, but there's a whole issues we can discuss about Hitler came from Germany, where Jews dropped the religion and they became reformed because they said that will give them a better life, they'll assimilate. And where did Hitler come from? There's a lot to talk about. But the point is, we believe, and we will never we forget that God is the one who rules the world, and He is compassionate. And we never question Him, and we follow Him no matter what we went through Hitler and we lost our relatives. We will not turn our backs and say, now we're going to do different than what God commanded us. God said, do not create your own sovereignty. Zionism was born out of actually Reform Judaism, where they assimilated, and most of them came from non-religious families, and they said, hey, assimilation's not working, so what we're going to do is create our own country. So people said, hey, that sounds good. And if you're not bound by the laws of God, because almost entirely the Zionist movement came from Reform and non-religious. Even today, if you had gone to that parade that Faraz helped arrange, and we're really thankful for that, and against a counter demonstration against the celebration for Israel, celebration of celebrating a rebellion against God, celebrating the oppression of a people. Well, how really mournful that is. That's part of the Nekva. That's terrible that is. And so we went out there to speak up and not be silent on such a thing. But what are they celebrating? Who are the people celebrating? You saw them. If you looked, you saw these were not the very religious Jews. That was clear. And if I always carry around pictures. It's dog-eared. It's all what. But this is the David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister, reading the Declaration of Independence in 1948. Look at the dais. Look who was sitting there. Well, you can look at our site and you'll see. Not one of them is covering that. Imagine making an Islamic state without an imam or a sheikh there. Imagine making a Christian state without a priest, a pope. They're making a Jewish state. The Star of David, the name Israel, which is Jacob, and they look at them. One of them is covering that. It is so contradictory. It is so crazy, it's beyond words, and it's laughable if it wouldn't be so sorrowful. So this is what they're doing. I could go on and on, but time is limited, and I don't really hope that. So I just want to say, understand the root. We're talking about the Jewish people who are true to the Torah. We never can accept a concept of a Jewish sovereignty, and on top of that Jewish sovereignty, because really they wanted to create it in Uganda and Patagonia, because they're looking for a lush land at that time, a practical land. But they had a meeting in the 1890s, the first Congress, the Zionist Congress, and they said, hey, we need a massive support of the countries, like you see, from Britain, from England. So we'll go to Palestine, and we'll wave the Bible, and we'll say, this is the land that God gave the Jews 3,000 years. You heard them yell, say, it's 3,000 years they were yelling at the thing there. 3,000, ignoring what all the rabbis and what the King Solomon wrote in the prophecy, that we're not allowed to have our own sovereignty. It's a prophecy of King Solomon. You can't get higher than that. It's called the Song of Songs that says this prophecy. And they ignored all of these things, and they're coming along and they're claiming the right to it. And if anybody speaks up against them, then you're anti-Semitic, especially after Hitler, where everybody's so sensitive to how the world was silent at Jewish suffering, and they incorporate the Hitler. They incorporate the Holocaust into their narrative that if you don't support them, you're hating Jews. If the Palestinians hate Jews, why? Because they didn't have internet. They didn't have all the modes of media that we have today. But at that time, they had 70 years. They enjoyed of the sole holder of the mic, and they told everybody that the victims are the Jews who suffered so much, and the villains are the Palestinians. And why don't they want the Jews? Not because the Jews, the Zionists, took the land, took Deir Yassin and so forth. No, they said they're against them because they hate the Jews. How obnoxious, how terrible that is when Jews live together. We have pictures. We were living our Jewish community. Here, this Rabbi Hachheiser, his what after the other I can mention, his grandfather, I personally went to him to demonstrations, studied in Hebron. They lived in Palestine. They all had been told about how we lived together in harmony in the same courtyards, babysat each other's children, the most precious thing. So nothing, this is a fact of life. There was no human rights groups to protect us. It wasn't necessary. There was no necessity for that. We lived in peace and harmony. What changed? Zionism came and changed. But they tell the world the narrative, the Palestinians and the Arabs and the Muslims hate the Jews. How despicable. Jews, so above the fact that we're not allowed to make our own sovereignty, was certainly not allowed to kill and steal. That's part of the basics of Torah. And certainly we have, and on top of that, we have to show gratitude for people who did good for us. When we were being persecuted many times throughout our history, it was the Muslim countries that embraced us, the Arab countries, and took us in, including in the Ottoman Empire and including in Palestine. They took us in there, and we were able to flourish, and we put out our greatest rabbis. So how dare they? We have to show gratitude. We're taught in the Torah that we have to show gratitude. Moses showed gratitude to the water that he was in the wicker basket he was holding. He didn't smite the water to make it blood. So we have to we teach that to our children. So how dare the Zionists make a narrative that it's a religious conflict and on top of that to vilify the Palestinian people and in one fell swoop all the Arabs and Christian Arabs, Muslim Arabs, and especially Muslims. This is unacceptable, it's repugnant, and it's not Judaism. Therefore, we'll stand with this truth that the Jewish people who are true to the Torah around the world, invariably, no matter what community you will go, if you go to Argentina, you go to England, wherever there's, or Montreal, where they're coming from here, when you come, wherever you will find the very religious community, if you go where there's a solid, very large communities, you will see it openly. For instance, I'm in New York, right across from Manhattan, everybody's invited to look. Williamsburg, Brooklyn, it's the largest concentration of the religious community. There's not one single Israeli flag there. Why? Because they're very religious. And being that they're very religious, it is unacceptable. It cannot be accepted, Zionism, or the existence of the Zionist state of Israel. At the time, so I'm going to stop it. I'm going to say we pray, and we urge everybody that to do for the Palestinian people, understand that they are the victims and they're suffering. Ultimately, it's the Almighty who's the power, and we urge everybody to pray to Him to bring a speedy and peaceful, because everything God can accomplish anything. He should bring a speedy and peaceful, total removal of the impediment to peace, the Zionist state of Israel, so we can live in peace again in a free Palestine. And also, do not be silent. Do not be intimidated. You can study from our writings. You can see. If anybody accuses you of being anti-Semitic, say, wait, I know that there's a bunch of respectable rabbis. He's a chief rabbi in Palestine, nothing with the Israeli rabbinate. There are people, hundreds of thousands of Jews who are very religious Jews, and they give their lives for their religion, and they're anti-Zionist. So why am I an anti-Semite if I'm standing together with these serious distinguished rabbis? So you have, it's something to stand up for the people of Gaza, stand up for the people of Palestine and the refugee camps where they're spread around the world, and let us not be silent, and because they're lacking water, food, mental assistance, everything they're lacking. We have, and they're the victims. And let the world know it's not a religious conflict. It is a political, selfish movement, a flawed movement that is against the people who believe in God and serve God. God should help. We should be able to celebrate soon a free Palestine soon in our days. Thank you.
God willing.
Yeah. The Zionists want to always confuse the subject and intimidate and place fear. So when you will have a debate with them, if they'll take you on the talk show, they'll say, I want to know, do you condemn Hamas? Do you condemn Hezbollah? Before we start the conversation, excuse me, I condemn Zionism because you are the ones, your hands are covered in blood. You are the root of all the bloodshed. Action brings reaction. We're not condoning violence, but you are the one who brings the response from all these communities who suffered so much. Now, the Hezbollah, Hamas, all these organizations will tell you stories of how they lived, their parents lived together with Jews, and they want to live together with Jews, and they have nothing against Jews. That I can tell you for a fact. That's why Hezbollah met with us, because it's a logical result of understanding that if we are not out to subjugate them and oppress them, then they're not my enemies. The issue is how to go about combating this occupation. We're not going to get into that. What's the different way, the Jewish approach, the different approach. Yes. But the root issue is, if you want to solve the solution, a doctor who's going to prescribe cortisone and other medications on a festering wound, and he's not he doesn't know what's happening, and the person is bleeding internally, he's a murderer. If he doesn't, he has to diagnose it properly. And if it's an internal bleeding, putting on cortisone is just going to make the person bleed out. You have to look at the diagnose what the issue is. The root issue here is Zion, not of Palestinians and Jews. We don't have a conflict of religion. Because we are Jews, we oppose the occupation. The root issue is this new neighbor to the block. We lived there for hundreds of years. All of a sudden, the movement comes around, and all of a sudden, there's strife and problems. Remove this flawed political entity, and you'll see it'll automatically come back to peace. I had a great rabbi who just passed away a year ago, one of our great fighters against Zionism. He was actually by Hitler. He was was hiding in a bunker. His name was Rabbi Becker, blessed memory. But what he used to always say is, let's just look at the history. As I mentioned before, we have to always look where it comes from. He used to always say, look at the fact, Jews and Muslims lived together for hundreds of years. If there would be this problem, if there would be some type of point of contention, how was it able that they lived? But the answer is very simple, that the imams and the ayatollahs and the sheikhs, they all knew, they were educated. They knew what it says in our Torah. It's nothing hidden. Everything is open. They knew that we have a different belief. As the sheikh was saying, what will happen in the future? Muslims believe one thing will happen. The Jewish believe. We believe, though, clearly that it is forbidden, expressly forbidden, the most strongest concept by the Jewish people for us to take up arms or to try to preempt the coming of them. Say, we can't preempt, it's ridiculous. It's like you're going to shoot at a ghost or something. You can't make it happen. Yes. It's a godliness. We believe when the Almighty will see the time is proper, then He'll make a metaphysical change in the world where all humanity all of a sudden will start recognizing one God, and everybody will come together. It says that all the nations will come together and join arms, and God will rebuild the temple, not King Solomon. We believe then God will build the temple. Now, you have a different belief. We have our belief.
Yes.
It's not a problem.
Yes,
it's not a problem. We have to serve God, be kind to our neighbors, help each other, as we've been doing. That's a good Jew is somebody who emulates God. Mahu rachum afata terachum. Just as God is compassionate, you should be kind. That's what we teach each other. Help your neighbors, do good. And that's what we were living together with the Muslims and the Arabs, the Christians. We were living together.
Yeah.
What was the problem?
There was no problem.
No problem. It's a different religion. You live here in Toronto. What's the name of your city? Kitchener. One day I'll get it.
Berlin.
It was what?
It used to be Berlin.
Berlin, really? But you
city
broke
was
the walls of Berlin.
No,
huh?
I didn't break. I wasn't even
You
born.
weren't there. Okay.
1918, they changed it from Berlin because there's a large German population here.
Yeah.
They changed it because of the war to Kitchener.
Wow.
Lord Kitchener was a British
I think we
military.
should make some type of petition. Get back the name Berlin.
They're actually it's in the
People
work. In fact, our city hall is still called Berlin Tower.
Yeah, people
But
wake
they-
up,
I
speak
hope so.
something to
Inshallah, God willing.
Yeah, but does anybody question? You say, "Wow, you have a neighbor. You're good with your neighbor. He's a different religion." Nobody thinks like that. It's ridiculous. You out of your mind? What's the problem? Why was it a problem then? It wasn't a problem. We just like you understand this in Toronto, you can in Canada, you can in Kitchener, in Berlin, wherever it may be, you can understand that the way it was in Palestine, and especially in Palestine. Why especially in Palestine? Because it was the most elite of the
Arab
Jewish
areas,
community
yes.
and the Arab community. I'm sure most probably they were these. I know of the Jewish people was rabbis who retired, wanted to live off the life, and so it was the most elite of. So we're talking about holy people. So that obviously, the more holy, the more saintly, the more you do kindness. So they live together in peace and harmony, and that is the issue. Zionism is uprooting that. It's a whole transformation, Eretz Judaism, a transformation to nationalism, and simply masquerading in a facade of Judaism to intimidate, to try to legitimize what they're doing, and to put fear into people that they shouldn't stand up and speak out, which we hope that people will change about that.
Well, you're helping a lot with that, Rabbi. When you're talking and encouraging people to speak out against Zionism and standing with them and telling them, I'm a Jew and we have a movement and we're out there. Don't be discouraged. Don't deter from this battle and keep going. You know, I think this helps a lot. I think this has helped to a very high level, to be honest with you. Very high level. I think the Sheikh will say the same thing, and the priests right now, right? When the Jews come out with us, it makes a huge difference, right? Because they got some power, right? Because of their money and their bullying and their bribing and their blackmailing and their tactics, their lobby, right? So, how powerful is this lobby?
Oh, look, the Satan. God gave the Satan certain
lots of power.
Able to do it. I mean, if you just, again, I'm going to regress to 1948. Does it make sense that they made a UN? United Nations was created to make peace in the world. Isn't that so?
Yes.
That's what it was created to have peace. The whole United Nations. And one of the first things they did was to ratify the creation of a minority, the Zionists, right? Although they called it the Jewish state or whatever it may be, the Jews, over a plurality of over the largest community with the Muslims and the second. How could that bring peace if you make a Jewish state where the majority is not? Just giving it a name of a religion, Jewish, automatically is looking for problems. So how did that come about? It's the works of the Satan. It just defies logic. And the same thing till today. They have they intimidate, and maybe there's I don't want to. We love to say that everybody has good souls and good hearts, and the many people which they truly do, and they want to do good. They think they're doing good, and they want to help Jews because they feel they suffered by, but they know they suffered by the Holocaust. They want to help them. They feel really guilty, and they feel sometimes that the world was silent, and we want to help. So there are many people who want to help, but there's also ulterior motives that the people should have a base for the oil industry in the Middle East, and there's many different issues. So they have the Zionists manipulate, and just like they use the concept of the Holocaust, they use oil issues and different issues to be able to get politicians to support what they're doing, and they're very successful. Once they have money, so they pay for the most expensive PR firms. It's a fact. They pay for this, and these PR firms know how to play and excuse me? Psychology. Here, like I say, do you know they have talking points in every university? They say we're having problems with the students because the students' eyes are opening. So they have talking points, how you should approach if somebody just wants to discuss about Palestine and the occupation. So the first thing is, like I said, they should say, what do you say about Hamas? In other words, they try to change the conversation, put you on the defensive, and make you look like you're an evil person. That's the way they try to legitimize what they're doing, even though it's totally wrong. It's like a good lawyer a good lawyer can take somebody who's a mass murderer and it may look like the victim is the one responsible, right? We've gone through many cases like that in our lives.
I think they try to sometimes legitimize their system by saying that they're democratic, right?
Right.
And then when you use again with them and say, for instance, Hamas was elected democratically and they got a majority at that time, and then at that point they start to maneuver around and then say, oh, you know what, there's a terrorist organization in the U.S. or whatever, and they try to just put them in a box, and then also justify blockading Gaza and bombarding the place in pieces, when they're sometimes just fighting back. I mean, what does Hamas have? A few rockets? I mean, or let's just say even thousands of rockets compared to the Merkavas and the fighter jets and all the drones and all this technology that they're getting from the world, right? So
it's simply. You could just, like I say, look at all the people that are victims who are being murdered over there. And I always say, and add to that, okay, I always say, let's just put that aside for a second. Look at all the Jewish people. You can go. We have thousands of pictures. You can see daily we have demonstrations. Jews among, so we don't carry guns. We're never militant. You'll never hear that the Jewish people shot in our communities. We don't carry guns. We simply don't have arms. And so what do? But we do go out and demonstrate. We speak up against the concept, the Zionist state of Israel. We refuse to serve in military, in the IDF. And they get brutally beaten, assassinated. Our rabbis get assassinated. From day one in 1948, the Jewish community actually went out. They went out to give over the Jewish community to the Jordanians, and they shot at them. And we have pictures of that. We have pictures of the Rabbi Chazan and Rabbi Mintzberg of blessed memory. They went out with a white flag to the Jordanians to give over the community to them. And our history is from before then and the year after that. They're constantly beating, assassinating. And we have the pictures. Why is the world silent? How could they be silent? How do they justify what they're doing to the Jewish community? If any other country in the world would once take action like the Zionists do to our children, to our elders, to whoever it may be, women, children, the world, their prime minister would be traipsing around the world and demanding reparations and saying, well, how could you do that? Or when they dig up graves. They dig up graves constantly because for archaeological purposes, because it's a boon for them. They know a rabbi died 2,000 years ago. We have the name, 2,000 years, the bones, they can study it, 3,000. Well, they have all the information. So they dig up graves with impunity. And we stand there, stand in the holes, and they get murdered, they get beaten. We have pictures of this. And if any other country would dare dig up a Jewish grave, I've always tell a narrative. I was in Cairo. A few times we went, and we went also from there to Egypt. We wanted to go to Gaza, so we went through Cairo. And in Cairo, they have a ring road. You know the ring road? They have a ring road, it's called, because there's a lot of traffic. And so they made a ring road, like a major highway that crosses around Cairo. And that way it alleviates the traffic. But being that they have to ring around, they had to go through a massive old grave. Like we said, Jews lived there. And there's a big Jewish graveyard. So it cost them millions of dollars, but nobody talks about it. They built pillars that they should not disturb the graves. The Israelis made an extension, a Kuvush 6 it's called, the Highway 6, and they made an extension. Bulldoze right through the graveyards. They make hotels, bulldoze. No respect for that because they don't respect God, and that's okay. Nobody talks about it. If any other country would do what they're doing, like I say, they would be the first
to speak,
to yell and call anti-Semite. They do it, and the world is silent. So just showing how it defies logic and it's the works of Satan. But we shouldn't be silent.
So the question that I have is one of the questions that people raised is how many covenants is there, like laws inside the Torah?
There's 613 laws in the Torah.
613 laws. Okay.
But each one branches off into many different issues. Like the issue of Sabbath has so many laws involved.
Okay.
That, so,
Details. Okay. Different branches. Okay. So the question is.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sheikh.
Forgive me.
Yeah.
Yes, the question is, have you studied how many of those has the Zionist regime breached? Have you?
There was once a great rabbi who said there was somebody who was not normal, and somebody asked in regarding to get a match, or a matchmaker asked, the guy has a little bit of a quirk. He's a little not normal. So the rabbi, so he made a big circle and he made a little circle in the middle. And he said, the big circle, he has these good points. He's very learned. He's good-hearted. He's this, that. And in the middle, but he has a quirk. He's a little not normal. And then he made a draw. He's a scholar, but a little not normal. He does this, but a little not normal. There's not anything that the Zionists don't breach. There's not one issue that they don't try to uproot. They try to uproot the belief in God and the and subservience to God. So automatically, there's nothing that's a command that's upheld, because if it's rooted in heresy, then it's nothing.
So truly, they're against God's teachings, they're against the covenants, they're against everything that you guys stand for, and the religious people.
The root of Zionism is like that, and unfortunately, they ensnare people who are from the Jewish community who are gullible, and they think that because what they use is they have, like I say, PR, and they play this music, and they say, oh, 3,000, 2,000 years we were in exile, and now we are returning to the land God gave us. So they take people who are emotional, and they ease this, and they try and snare them, and they think they're doing right. So that's why it's part of our issue to go out and try to teach these youth, to teach that they should hear that they're being misled. Like I said, we pray to God that the world should awaken to the truth and stop supporting this rebellion against God and help bring a free Palestine sooner or later. And God, with His compassion, should make it
by
happen.
God's will, we'll see a free Palestine. We'll all pray, in our religious centers and our holy places. So I'd like to conclude. I thank the Rabbi Weiss. I thank Reverend Paul, and I obviously thank Sheikh Shafiq Huda for hosting us here and having this beautiful unified event. Inshallah, we'll have more. Inshallah, like you said, hopefully we will. When I say inshallah, means by God's will. That yeah, that's good. Yeah, that we will see. We will have a free Palestine by next year. We don't have to walk against Israel. Next year we'll be walking for celebrating the liberation, inshallah, of Palestine. And yeah. So I'd like to just maybe we can do a prayer together. Rabbi, did you want to just read a prayer together? Any prayer?
Well, with God's help, this is a simple prayer that we start our prayers and end with prayers, that we yearn and we look out for the day, and we pray to God that He should, with His compassion, reveal His glory throughout the world, where all humanity will serve Him in harmony and peace, and of course, a free Palestine soon.
Inshallah. Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Without any suffering, that it shouldn't
major suffering. Yeah.
Bloodshed.
Yes. Thank you very much.